This episode is actually a final project for a class I'm taking in school. The first 13 minutes are going to be an explanation of a psychological theory. If you want to just jump right into the spiritual practice, it's at minute 13. Either way, we're so glad to have you here in the practice room. Welcome to the practice room. I'm your host, Samantha Lamb. God has been slowly moving me in all new directions, slowing me down, and teaching me a whole new way to encounter Him. Come and join me in creating space for this new experience here in the practice room. Well, hello friends, and welcome back to the practice room. It's so wonderful to have you here today. Today's episode, I am going to be sharing some things I've been learning in my master's program. So many of you know, I've been in school now for a small eternity. I very slowly started taking classes at Pierce College, at the junior college, and then transferred to ASU, and now I'm at Fuller. And there are some themes of learning that I've had since some of my very first classes that are starting to really produce some interesting concepts that I wanted to be able to share with you today. Now, I do want to share that this podcast is actually a final project from my child and family development class. This is one of the things I've loved about a lot of my classes is this creative way that I can interact with what I'm learning and move out of just the left brain information of it, but the right brain experience of it. But some of the learning from this quarter in particular really is the top layer of something that I've been learning about for, 6 or 7 years. So one of the interesting things that I'm realizing now is that early in my academic career, I took a class on child development, and I actually took it in a 5-week winter term. So the community colleges do semesters, and then they do this short 5-week term. So I took a class in that 5 weeks, which is kind of nuts. And I don't know how much I really recommend it. It's definitely a lot of information in a very short amount of time. And it was some of the first exposure I had to a lot of information on child development. And it was hard for me to understand when I first was exposed to this information that different theorists, different individuals had different theories of development. I didn't fully understand that. I thought somehow they all fit together perfectly, and they don't. Some of these theories, different people thought different things, and they didn't all agree with each other, which is completely fine. What's beautiful about understanding it better now is understanding the multidimensional aspect of looking at a client or a person or yourself through these different theories and seeing which one might be helping you understand yourself or another better, and then switching to a different one if something else helps you more. So I am going to be talking about one theory in particular today, and it is a theory by a gentleman named Uri Bronfrenbrenner. Bronfrenbrenner was actually the son of a zoologist. He was trained at an early age to look at the wilderness and observe what was happening. So at this time, the way they were studying child development was a little non-organic. They would take children and they would put them into situations, and then they would see how they would react. The problem is they were changing the natural environment of this child. Well, Uri Bronfrenbrenner said, let's actually observe the children in their natural habitat, a more naturalistic kind of observation to get our data. And the way that he started to see the development of a child was through their dyadic relationships. So a dyad is two. So a dyadic relationship might be your relationship with your mother. And he started to see the development through different domains, and he gave these domains a name. Now, I'm going to tell you, if you go to show notes, there is a slide of this, and it might help you to understand it better. But basically, the very first domain that you live in is your microsystem. And this is the system in which you have all of your close dyadic relationships. So this is your mother and your father and your brothers and sisters and anybody that you're having that close personal relationship with. Okay, the next layer is the one that everybody gets confused about. But this next layer is actually called the mesosystem. Now, you would think this would be like people that you know, but you're not as close to, but that's not quite it. The mesosystem is really made up of how the people in your microsystem interact with one another. So this might be how your mother and brother have a relationship, or how your mother interacts with your teacher at school. It's not the direct interaction, but it's those relationships still have an effect on you. And you have to think of it all as a system. Everything in the system has an effect on everything else. The next layer out is our exosystem. And now, again, the exosystem doesn't involve the developing person directly. It's not like you have this dyadic relationship, but it's more of the things that affect you from a distance. So this might be how your brother's soccer team is doing. It doesn't have this direct impact on you, but it does, because if your brother's soccer team if he plays club soccer and he's traveling all over the place, that's going to affect what's going on in your family. That is the exosystem. And then the next system out is called the macrosystem. And this is how we're affected by the cultural level. So do you live in a small city or a large city? Do you live in a city with a lot of smog and you have asthma? And so that has an effect on your development because you've been in the hospital so much. Or you might live in a rural community that is in a food desert and you don't have enough, healthy food and vegetables. And so that has an effect on you, that even though your doctors say you are overweight, you are actually malnourished. That's part of the macro system. And then there are some who've added on another layer called chronosystem. And this is considering where we are in time and where we are in history. The technological advances that we experience in the 21st century as opposed to if we were living in the 16th century. Okay, so the point of all of that is that not just one thing has an effect on your development. Your development is not solely responsible by one person. It's not as if you had a father who was absent or a father who wasn't emotionally engaged, and therefore your development crumbled. All of these different facets play a large role in your development. In fact, the child's interactions or your interactions constitute your own authentic basis for your development. You're not a passive agent. The environment does affect you, but you are also an active agent in this process. Okay, so why is this interesting and why am I talking about it in the practice room? It might seem a little off-brand, although most of you know I'm getting my master's degree, and so have I mentioned that? But what does this have to do with the practice room? What does this have to do with spiritual practices? Well, one, as I started to think about this process of this ecological model of the way that we're nested inside of different domains for our development, I started to think about how God is present in every single one of those domains. A couple of months, probably over a year ago now, I read a book called Spiritual Autobiography, Discovering and Sharing Your Spiritual Story. I actually shared about this book back in the testimony episode where I told my story. And part of what I learned in that process was the faith tradition I've been part of for many, many years had a very specific way of telling your faith story. And it went something like, I was a sinner and I was in all kinds of sin. And then so-and-so met me and they studied the Bible with me and they told me the correct way. And then I repented, I was baptized, and now look, everything's great. And what's interesting, the interesting phenomena is that almost everybody in this faith tradition has that format of their faith story. But this book helped me to start to see how God has been engaging with me since my conception, since my birth, since I was a little child and I was 6 years old, and when I was 12 years old, and where he was through that whole process of my development. And so this started to make me think about that same thing. Where is God in my Bronfrenbrenner ecological system? When I think of my different domains, the relationships that I had growing up, or what I even have right now, like my primary relationship is no longer with my mother. My mother has passed away. My primary relationships are with my husband and my own children, and then my close friends and the people that are currently in my microsystem. And my exosystem is how my husband is friends with my best friend's husband, and we all go out to dinner together. We actually went out last night and celebrated our anniversary. We just celebrated 20 years. And so we all went out to dinner, and then we went to, my son is part of an orchestra at Westmont, and so they were having their big Christmas concert. So we went to the Christmas concert. Now, that's his microsystem. That's my exosystem. That's my friend's macro system, because they don't have a direct impact until they're sitting at a concert for their best friend's son's orchestra. How that system interweaves, and how is God present in each one of those systems? So, what I'd like to do today is I'd like to take us through a biological domain Bronfrenbrenner spiritual practice. Yeah, I think I might need to work on the name of that. But whatever we call it, I'd like us to sit just for a few moments in each domain and notice what are the things in that domain for you? And then how does God show up in every single domain? So let's step into our spiritual practice now. So why don't you get yourselves comfortable, and maybe sitting up with your feet on the floor. Close your eyes. Let's take a couple of deep breaths to settle into our bodies. One more. And as we enter into this practice, I want to invite you to just be aware of your body. You are at the center of this model. Your body, your spirit, your mind. And I want you to consider now those people in the first level, those people that you have direct interactions with. Maybe it's a mother or a father, a husband, a child. Maybe it's a classmate or someone you work with. Maybe it's a neighbor. Maybe it's the barista at your favorite coffee place that you see regularly. you to try and imagine yourself at the center and all of the people that you have these direct relationships with. Imagine them all around you. And then I want you to imagine like somebody turned on a golden light, and the light fell on each one of these people. And the light moved over each one of them until the light also enveloped you. I want you to imagine that is the light of Christ. That Christ is moving in every one of these relationships. That every person he sends into your life, he's seeking you. And ask yourself, how is he doing this? Even the difficult relationships, even the things that may feel hurtful, how is Christ seeking you and present in every relationship you have? I want you to consider now how these relationships interact with each other. This is a little less about you directly, but these still have a large impact on you. Maybe your husband is mad at your boss for making you work late. Maybe your boss is mad at a coworker. What's happening between these relationships that you have? What do you see happening? Maybe a friend at church is mad at your pastor. How does this have an effect on you? And again, I want to invite you to consider, how is God working in those relationships to reach you? What might he be trying to teach you or show you? Or is there a place you want him to show up more and you can't quite see him working? Maybe this is something you want to bring to him and ask him about. Let's take one more step outward and consider our exosystem. What are maybe the organizations or systems that have an effect on you, but you might feel like you have less control over them? Maybe this is the way your company is run, or the way that the faculty at your school grades your papers. Maybe this is what your church has decided to give money to, and you don't agree. What are the things and the systems and the organizations that impact you, but maybe a little less directly, and yet you still feel the impact of them? I want to invite you to consider how God is working in each one of those also. What might He be calling you to in each one of those situations you're in? Where is He calling you to submit or humble yourself? And where is He calling you to intervene and speak up? There's a tension between those. God is at the center of the tension. So just take a moment to notice what that feels like. And we're going to take one more step out into our macro system. And I want you to consider the culture that you live in. Many of you listening are listening from inside the United States. But even living inside the United States, you might be living in a small city or a large one. You might be living in abundance or scarcity. You might be living in what feels like the majority, or maybe you live in what feels like the minority. Maybe you were born here and you speak English as a native English speaker. Or maybe you're an immigrant and you don't speak English the same way. I want you to consider the culture that you live in, your unique experience of it. And then I want you to consider how God is in that too. How is God interacting with you, even in this outer layer? How does it have an impact on you? What are the things you would want to tell God about your experience of this outer layer? And now I want to ask you to take a step back and try and see all of it. all of these different ways that you experience the world around you, between your direct relationships, between the relationships between the people you have relationships with, between the organizations and systems you're part of, between the culture you live in. I want you to see the nested nature, the phenomena, and take a moment to really see how God is in every single layer. In everything that helps to develop you, God is reaching out to you. He seeks to know you and connect with you. And He's calling to you in every layer. I want to give you a moment to just consider that. God, thank you. Thank you, God, for the ways that you are forming us. Thank you that you are in everything. You are in every relationship. You are in every organization and system. You are in every part of our culture. You are working for our good in everything. God, help us to be present to that. Help us to notice it and see it and experience it, so that we would, one, know how loved we are by you. You always have your attention on us. You never forget about us. And help us to not find ourselves lonely, because we know you're there in everything. God, we love you and we lift praise to your name. In Jesus Christ, amen. Okay, deep breath, friends. Well, I hope that you have enjoyed our time here in the practice room. If you are enjoying it, I want to encourage you to rate us, or click on the stars, or share this podcast with a friend. And in the meantime, I hope you are enjoying a wonderful Advent season, and I hope to see you back here soon in the practice room. Thank you for joining us here in the practice room, where everything we do is practice, practicing knowing God deeper and living our lives closer to Him. I've been your host, Samantha Lamb. If you want to know more about me or what I'm up to, you can find me at Instagram or Facebook at The Practice Room LA, or at my website at thepracticeofgod.com. I hope you were able to connect with God just a little bit deeper here in the practice room.